New one. All right. Welcome, everyone. This is Brother Doug. I'm with my sister Shoshana, my sister Sally, my brother Dennis, and we are going to be getting into the book. We're going to get into a study called What is Scriptural / Biblical Tithing? How can we apply it today, or can we apply it today? So we're going to be going into scriptural verses of pertaining to that matter. So we are going to be specifically going into scriptural verses like that. So after we're done, everyone is going to, put their input and really talk about what we've just read. But first, we're going to actually get into the scriptures here. So we're going to go to my eSword app, which I have on the laptop here. It's a great tool. So we are going to go to the first cross-reference I have is Genesis chapter 14, verse 20. And we're going to start here. And Barak be Yahuwah the Most High, which has delivered your enemies into your hand, and he gave him tithes of all. So this is the Melchizedek saying to Abraham, Barak be Yahuwah the Most High, which has delivered your enemies into your hand. And then Abraham gave him tithes of all. And if you know the New Testament, then you know who Melchizedek really is. He's actually Yahusha before he took on flesh. That's what I believe. Because even in prophecy in the book of Psalms, it says that Yahuwah made his son Yahusha a heavenly priest after the order of Melchizedek. So that's who I believe Melchizedek of Salem actually is. And Salem is the root word for Jerusalem. So now we're going to go to Genesis 14, verse 14, verse 22. Oh, actually, no. Hold on. I think we're actually going to go to the book of Leviticus here. We're going to actually go to Leviticus 27, verse 30. And all the tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or the fruit of the tree. So in this verse is talking about the tithe is the seed of the land, talking about plants, or the fruit of the tree is Yahuwah's, meaning it belongs to the Father, it belongs to Yahuwah. It is set apart unto Yahuwah. So Leviticus 27:30 is the first instance we see so far of a commandment in Yahuwah's law to give him of the seed of the land, the earth, and of the fruit of the tree, a tithe, which basically means a tenth of all, or the first fruit of your increase to Yahuwah. So that's Leviticus 27, verse 30. Okay, we're going to continue on here in the same chapter, verse 31 to 33. Oh, no, 32, I mean. And if a man will at all redeem out of his tithes, he shall add thereto the fifth part thereof. Now, this verse is talking about will redeem out of his tithes, mean take out of his tithes. He shall add thereto the fifth part thereof. So instead of just being a tenth of his increase, he has to add a fifth part if he takes out of his tithes for himself. So that's verse 31 of Leviticus 27, and it says, and concerning the tithe of the herd or of the flock, even of whatsoever passes under the rod, the tenth shall be set apart unto Yahuwah. Meaning, okay, so you have the herd, meaning animals, livestock, the flock, sheep, goats. So whatever passes under the rod, the tenth of that, of whatever, of either the herd or the flock, shall be unto Yahuwah, belongs to Yahuwah. So that's another tithe verse right there. So now we're going to go next in numerical order here. We're going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 11. Then there shall be a place which Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose to cause his name to dwell there. So that's very important right there. That's specifically, there's a place in the land that they had Yahuwah have his name dwell there. That's literal. There shall you bring all that I command you, your burnt offerings and your sacrifices, your tithes, and the heap offering of your land, of your hand, and all your choice vows which you vow unto Yahuwah. Now it's important to understand here, so far what we've seen is tithes is livestock, crops, the fruit of the land. That is what tithes actually are, and you'll understand why I'm making a point of that later in this study. Okay, so now we're going to go down in the same chapter. We're going to go down to verse 17. It says, you may not eat within your gates the tithe of your corn, or of your wine, or of your oil, or the firstlings of the herds, or of your flock, nor any of your vows which you vow, nor your free will offerings or heap offerings of your hand. So, basically, this is a strong statement, strong commandment by Yahuwah. They are not to eat of their tithes. They are to give their tithes to Yahuwah. Okay, so that's why it's saying you are not to eat within your gates the tithe of your corn. So this is all livestock, food. This is being considered biblical tithes, scriptural tithes. Okay, we have not seen one verse yet pertaining to money. Now, I'm not saying that there won't be, but I'm saying for right now, you see a recurring theme of oil, wine, fruit of the tree being tithes and stuff like that. So just important to point that out. Deuteronomy chapter 26, verse 12 says, this is our next cross-reference, when you have made an end of the tithe, of tithing all the tithes of your increase, that's obviously talking about fruits, plants, increase, the corn, the harvest, the third year, which is the year of tithing, and has given it unto the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, that they may eat within your gates and be filled. Now, notice that even this verse, nowhere does it say money. It says crops. It says it's talking about actual food, that the stranger, the widow, the fatherless, the orphan might have food to eat. So just something to keep in your mind here. It's not talking about any currency so far. Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 22 says, you shall truly tithe all the increase of your seed. Now, plants have seeds, so obviously that's the context here. That the field brings forth year by year. So basically, Yahuwah is baracking us. If we were farmers today, I believe, so far what we've seen so far, to apply this in modern day, number one, you would still need the Levitical system, number one. Number two, you would have to be a farmer, because all this stuff deals with agriculture, farming, these type of commandments. So those are the two main themes I'm seeing so far. It says, you shall truly tithe of all the increase of your seed, talking about the plants they grow, and the field brings forth year by year. So by tithing the first increase, what we would know as like first fruits and stuff like that, what the seed yields, Yahuwah is baracking them for their field to bring forth fruit. So that's the Barakim that Yahuwah is giving back to those that actually tithe to him. So, all right, so that was chapter 14, verse 22. Now we're going to go down to 23 here. It says, and you shall eat before Yahuwah your Elohim in the place which he shall choose to place his name there, the tithe of the corn, of your wine, and your oil, and the firstlings of your herds and of your flocks. And you may learn to fear Yahuwah your Elohim always. So right here in verse 23, even expounds upon what Yahuwah calls tithing. He's calling corn, wine, oil, the first of your herds and your flocks, meaning your animals. And by eating at the place that Yahuwah has called his name by, which most likely in those times would have been the temple, would have been where Yahuwah chose his name to dwell. So that is the context of verse 23 here in chapter 14. Now we're going to also go to verse 28 in the same chapter. It says, at the end of 3 years you shall bring forth all the tithe of your increase the same year, and you shall lay it up. Hold on. And at the end of 3 years you shall bring forth all the tithe of your increase the same year, shall lay it up within your gates. So that's verse 28. So it's talking about at the end of 3 years, after 3 years, you shall bring forth all the tithe, all the increase the same year, and you shall lay it up within your gates. So everything that you've increased after the 3 years has to be presented. All the tithes have to be presented to Yahuwah within the same year that you presented after the 3 years. So that was verse 28. Now we're going to go to 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 21. And the man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer unto Yahuwah the yearly sacrifice and his vow. Okay, so Elkanah and all of the people of his household went up to offer unto Yahuwah the yearly sacrifice and his vow. So specific yearly sacrifice that he's going up to sacrifice. So I'm kind of surprised that, interesting that my Bible app gave me that cross-reference. Okay, that's a little weird. All right, the next one is chapter 8, verse 15 of 1 Samuel. So chapter 8, verse 15. And he will take the tenth of your seed in your vineyards and give to his officers and to his servants. Okay, so here is a reference again to what tithes are. He says a tenth, meaning 10%, 1/10 of your seed, what your seed produces, the yielding of your fruits, probably talking about the harvest when the harvest comes in, and of your vineyards. Okay, vineyards is where you get the wine from. To give to his officers and to his servants. So again, that's referring to the tithes, to give a tenth of all. So again, so we see so far that tithing has to do with agriculture, has to do with animals, livestock, wine, corn, oil, basically food. Food and livestock is the two main things, and also, the wine and the oil, but mostly food and livestock. Verse 17 in the same chapter says, he will take the tenth of your sheep. So he's talking about the livestock. And you shall be his servants. So let's see here. Now we're going to go to the book of 2 Chronicles, chapter 31. We're going to go to verses 5 to 6. And it says, and as soon as the commandment came abroad, the children of Yashrael brought in abundance the first fruits of corn, wine and oil and honey, and of all the increase of the fields, and the tithe of all things they brought in abundance, or in abundance. So basically, it's lumping the first fruits of corn, wine, oil, and honey, and of all the increase of the fields, and the tithe of all things they brought in abundantly. So it's lumping tithe, even though it's saying it separately, it's lumping that with what is also defined as tithes, as you've seen so far in this study. Bunch of scriptures in the Old Testament define tithing as livestock, food, oil, wine. So very important to see that's lumping it together. Just as we've seen in other studies, the new moon might be a separate day from the Sabbath, but it's also a day of rest. But not trying to go too much on a tangent there, but just showing you 2 Chronicles 31 verse 5 that it's lumping tithing and comparing it to other offerings that are talking about the first fruits of corn, wine, oil, livestock, food. So just kind of making a point of that. Verse 12 of this same chapter, and it says, and brought in the offerings and the tithes and the dedicated things faithfully, over which Conaniah the Levite was ruler, and Shimei his brother was the next. So right here in verse 12, talking about that Conaniah the Levite is overseer of these offerings of the tithes. So that was part of the Levite's job, was to bring all the tithes of the peoples, obviously into the storehouse. And well, once we get to the end, and we're very close to the end here, you'll see what I'm talking about with the storehouse. So, all right, so now we're going to go to the book of Nehemiah. And let me just try to find it. Sorry, guys. It always happens when I'm trying to. Here we go. All right, so Nehemiah chapter 10, verses 37 30. Okay, so it says, Nehemiah 10:37 says, and that we should bring the first fruits of our dough and our offerings and the fruit of all manner of trees of wine and of oil unto the priests. So the people, the Yashrulites, all the rest of the tribes are supposed to give their first fruits to the priests, to the chambers of the house of our Elohim, and the tithes of our ground to the Levites, that the same Levites might have the tithes in all the cities of our tillage. And the priest, the son of Aaron, shall be with the Levites when the Levites take tithes, and the Levites shall bring up tithe of the tithes unto the house of our Elohim, to the chambers in the treasure house. Okay, so Nehemiah 10:37-38 is talking about the storehouse. So right there. It's also talking about Yahuwah's temple. It's actually saying the house of our Elohim. So the tithes are to be given to the Levites, so the Levites can present the tithes to Yahuwah. If that makes any sense to the viewers and listeners. I'm going to be going very quick here. Let's see here. So Nehemiah chapter 10:37-38 we just did. All right, so now we are going to be going to Nehemiah 13, verse 5, and it says, and he had prepared for him a great chamber where aforetime they laid the meat offerings, frankincense, and the vessels, and the tithes of the corn. So they are naming an offering of corn as a tithe. You notice that. The new wine and the oil, which was commanded to be given to the Levites, and singers and the porters and the offerings of the priests. So that was Nehemiah chapter 13, verse 5. And to point out, it's actually telling you a type of tithe is giving of the corn to the Levites to give to Yahuwah. Obviously, the frankincense is included in this, the wine, the oil. So that's just another cross-reference there. Now, if we go to verse 12 real quick, we'll see more of this. So Nehemiah 13:12 says, then all of Yehuda brought the tithe of the corn, again, tithe of the corn, and the new wine and the oil into the treasuries. So that was Nehemiah 13:12. We got two more cross references. Okay, and then we're going to have time for anyone that wants to add anything. We can all, add more cross references if needed, or just what people got out of this study. So, all right, we're almost done, guys. Amos chapter 4, verse 4. Come to Bethel and transgress at Gilgal. Multiply transgression and bring your sacrifices every morning and your tithes after 3 years. So basically, Yahuwah in Amos 4:4 is derogatorily saying to them, keep on sinning and bringing your sacrifices every morning. He's basically saying they're sacrificing in vain because they're leading sinful lives. That's what he's saying in Amos 4:4 context. And then it says your tithes after 3 years. He's not saying it's bad to give tithes. He's saying that, go ahead, keep doing that stuff, even though you're sinning against me and you're willfully sinning. So that was Amos chapter 4, verse 4. So Yahuwah wants obedience over sacrifice. Okay, so if you're not being obedient, you're trying to tithe. Basically, Yahuwah is hinting that it's worthless to do stuff like keeping the feast days, Sabbaths, and tithes and offerings according to the law if you're just living a wicked lifestyle. Basically what he's saying in Amos 4:4. The last cross-reference we're finally going to get to is where in my view, Christian preachers twist this like crazy. Malachi chapter 3, verse 8, and this is the last verse of our study. It says, will a man rob Yahuwah? Yet you have robbed me. But you say, wherein have we robbed you? In tithes and offerings. You are cursed with a curse, for you have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, and there may be meat, food in my house. And prove me now herewith, says Yahuwah of heaven's armies, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a baraking, and that there shall not be room enough to receive it. Okay, so that was Malachi 3:8 all the way to verse 10. And that concludes our study. I'm now going to unmute everyone. So if there's anything anyone wants to add, comment on, they can do so.
Yes, I have a comment. Today, and for probably many centuries, these so-called priests that are not Levites have been demanding tithes from the people. And the tithes have been money, gold, silver, and currency. And it doesn't say anything in Yahuwah's word that they should be doing this, because the tithes are for the Levite, the fatherless, the widow, and the stranger, according to his word.
Yep. There's no Bible verse anywhere that says that there's a new priesthood. There's nowhere in the Bible where it says there's a Christian priesthood. There's a Catholic Church priesthood that the priests of Catholicism supersede the Levites, and now you give economic tithing instead of food, instead of cattle, instead of wine, oil, because that's what I saw. I saw in Scripture nowhere is it saying it's money. It's not even saying it's money. It's actually saying it's the fruit of your increase. It's what the seed yields, meaning the plants. So if anything, biblical tithing, scriptural tithing would be giving our increase if we're farmers, and the Levitical system, if it was in place, hypothetically speaking, we would be giving the fruit our first fruits to the Levites to give to the Father. Other than that, that can't be applied. And so what I see, me personally, I see that that can't be applied right now until, in my opinion, the millennium. I believe that when the millennial comes, and just for viewers, yes, I do believe that the Levitical system will come in the new kingdom, at least for the 1,000-year reign. So I believe that scriptural tithing, if we're going to take scripture for scripture and what it's referring to as tithing, not what we've been taught is tithing, but what it says is tithing, we can't do right now. Unless you are able to give food to the widow, but even with that, we're supposed to be giving to Levites first, and it gets into the whole argument, can we do stuff in our own way like that? I believe we can feed the orphans, the widows, and stuff like that, obviously, but as far as like tithing, I don't think it's applicable. That's just my personal opinion. I don't believe it's applicable until we have a Levitical system again.
Well, you're always supposed to take care of the widow and the fatherless and the stranger in your land. And we do not have a Levitical priesthood, so there's no way we can send tithes to one. But I agree, we should take care of the stranger and the widow and the fatherless.
Yeah. And I believe, certain Christian churches, I'll give them credit, they actually do that. They do food drives and stuff like that, which is part of our duty, is to try to help people that don't have their own food. And
we should start with the body, the body of Messiah, and if there's leftover, then we can go give to the world. But I think the body of Messiah would come first. I think that is a law of Yahuwah somewhere.
The world takes care of its own.
I don't know if it's a verbatim commandment to go to the body first, but Yahusha does. He does make a distinction between the lost house, the sheep of Israel, and going to them first, even with the good news, and then going out to the Gentiles. So I think there is a precept that even Yahusha believed in, that basically the body of Messiah comes first, Yahuwah's people come first, and then you go out to the Gentiles and help them out. So I agree with that. I don't think there's an actual literal commandment, but I think there's definitely a precept that the body of Messiah comes first, with beads and stuff like that. But then we're supposed to, do also for the Gentile. So I agree. I don't think it was like an actual verbatim commandment from the Father. He always said, feed the poor, feed the, visit the orphans and the widows, and give to the stranger and the Levites. So Yahuwah kind of lumped it all together. So I think it goes to basically conviction. Obviously Yahusha was convicted to bring the lost sheep of the house of Israel first, and then the Gentiles. So, if we're to follow him, then most likely, the body of Messiah does come first. Just from his own example. And he told his disciples to go out to the lost sheep of the house of Israel first, not even to speak to the Gentiles until you try to preach the good news to the lost house. So I guess that's my belief on that. I agree with Sister Shoshana that we need to go to believers first. If there's any believer in need first, if there's not a believer in need, then we go to non-believers and, people that are homeless, the orphan, the widow. If we don't have anyone within the body of Messiah that's in need. other than that, unless anyone else has anything to add, I think we're about to end this study. I don't know if Sister Sally has anything to add. Brother Dennis has anything to add.
Any questions, comments?
1-800.
No, not right now.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for being open to studying the scriptures with us and actually testing what you've been taught and testing your that this doctrine that has been going around for centuries and centuries. So just remember that. And maybe some of you that are still in the church right now have came across this, and maybe this might be making you test what you've been taught. And just remember, if a pastor ever says to you, give me your tithes, you're robbing God. Be like, well, tithes were never money. Sorry, sir, tithes were never money. So I just hope this will really open your eyes to the scriptures and Yahuwah's set apart word. And if any atheists or any non-believers came across this, I just pray that you would accept Yahusha as your personal savior today. And, that goes for Christians, Jews, anyone that came across this. Accept the true Messiah, Yahusha the Messiah, the one of the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, the true Messiah of the Scriptures, the true living Messiah that died and rose again. I pray that you would read John 3:16 and actually ask him to be your savior. Ask him to save you from everyone's inevitable destruction if we did not accept Yahusha. So I just pray that you accept him to be your personal savior and allow him to renew your mind. Allow the set-apart spirit to renew your mind and allow him to make you into a new creation spiritually. 2 Corinthians 5:17. So I just pray that this message brought you guys and you enjoyed this study. Please click on the notifications and subscribe if you like this content and if you like what you listen to and you're intrigued by learning more about the scriptures and you want to see more of our studies. Please subscribe. Also reach out to us. We are on Facebook. I'm going to be making a group Facebook soon named the Awakened by Yahuwah Fellowship Assembly. So please reach out to me. My name is Douglas, DouglasBonInscgna. I'm on YouTube. You can reach out to me. My sister Shoshana Rogers, she's on Facebook. You can reach out to her. Our brother Dennis, he's on Facebook. Just please reach out to one of us. If you would like to fellowship, if you're starting for fellowship, hopefully this study also, struck something in your spirit and hopefully who is leading you out of the churches. I also pray that. So thank you guys, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.